العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
A Khalifa is chosen, and you can study that, inshallah. There's many books on that topic that you can read. Firstly, you look at the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Khilaafa Rashidin. That gives you the different ways in which the Khalifa was chosen, and then the Islamic history. What we're going to be looking at, and the purpose of these, the series, which is in reality a exposure and a refutation of the deviant groups and sects in issues to do with takfir and khuruj, and ta'at wali al-amr, obeying the leader. This is what this book covers, and in all honesty, it's a book which is the only book that I know that's on that particular subject, specifically from a manhaj perspective. So inshallah, we're going to go through the book. We're going to go through some chapters of the book, not all of it. But what we're going to cover, generally speaking, is the meaning of the Khalifa or the Khilaafa. Then we're going to look at the hukm and the evidences pertaining to the establishment of the Khilaafa. Then we're going to look at its reality, how it's established compared to how the deviated and misguided groups purport and seek to establish the Khilaafa. And all of that's going to be looking at statements and sayings of the Salaf and the ulama of this ummah pertaining to this topic. And then finally, the last point that we're going to touch on, or that the book touches on, or that we're going to touch on, is the issue of the callers to the founders of this call to Hakimiyya, which is the call to, for example, using the issue of the Khilaafa specifically as a vehicle in which to call people to revolutions against the leaders. That's a synopsis of the talk. The book is one that you can read independently. It doesn't need necessarily a teacher. It's quite clear in the chapters and how it's organized. So the book, it begins by speaking about, first of all, the importance of the topic. The importance of the topic. So the author, he says, you don't need to write anything. If anything you need to write, I'm going to say you can write this. Other than that, you can get the book. It's all in there. The name of the book is Islamic Caliphate. It's correct. I've got copies here actually as well, if you want to purchase copies afterwards, or there's copies. So, but that's the name of the book. The Islamic Caliphate is correct understanding and reality. By Sheikh Faisal Jassim. He's the author of the book. I'll give you the Arabic name at the end. If you want the Arabic PDF, I'll send it all to you. I'll put it on a group and they'll send it. I'll send it to, so I can send you the Arabic as well, inshallah, if you want. So beginning, the book's got a recommendation, or it's got an introduction by Sheikh Salih as-Suhaimi, who's well known. It's up, I don't mind. Can you hear me, or is this needed?
This is needed.
Is it needed?
No.
It's not needed? Okay.
The reason why sometimes is like they can hear you, but any slight shuffle at the back, some of the sisters can't hear.
Okay, let me try leave it here. I'll raise my voice.
Switch it on whenever.
Okay, if, for example, you can't hear, just stop me at any time and say it's better with the mic.
How about this? Speak.
Hello?
That's Jamil.
Shall we begin? Let me try and shout a bit louder. If I can't shout loud enough, then we'll turn it on, inshallah. Leave it on at the back, and if you can't hear me, and if I'm not shouting loud enough, then just say, raise your voice. That's, I think, should be enough, inshallah. The book it begins, let's get straight into it, inshallah. I'm just going to read selected parts of the book, and then if you've got questions at the end, then we can stop and ask questions. He speaks about the importance of the call to the Khilaafa became a vehicle that deviants got on to reach their objectives and to trap many of the ignorant masses that do not understand the reality of the caliphate. Okay, the deviant groups, we're speaking about the likes of Hizb ut-Tahrir, number 1, and the likes of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, number 2, and the likes of any of those offshoots like the Muhajirun. These are what's meant by the deviant groups, where they used the vehicle of the Khilaafa to entrap the masses. What that means is that no one's going to disagree with you when they say we want a Khilafah. We want a Khilafah which all the Muslims are united under. Who's going to say no? Nobody's going to say no. So the da'wah is appealing. It's appealing. However, underneath it, why he mentions that the reality, they trap the masses who do not understand the reality of their call. Their call is one towards revolutions and shedding of blood, because ultimately what they're saying is that there's no that we don't have a Khilafah and we can't be united until we have a Khilafah. So they confuse people. So this is what he means when he says, instead they seized a deviated understanding of the Khilafah that became a fixed fundamental from the fundamentals of the da'wah and a firm basis for the foundations of the deen, a pillar of its pillars. They all began running after this delusion in pursuit of this hope. So this issue of Khilafah has become a manhaj concept. They've made it a methodology and a manhaj concept, which it's now important to clarify the principles relating to it, so persons upon clarity and guidance, looking at the evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah and the statements of the Imam and the Salaf. Okay, so the first thing is the meaning of the word Khalifa or Khilafah. The Khilafah or Khalifa is from the word Khalafa, which means to succeed, successor. So linguistically, it means successor. And as you know, when it's mentioned in the Quran, it's mentioned that Allah is going to place a successor or successors on the earth, ambassadors on the earth. And we'll speak about the Islamic meaning as well. When it comes to for example, you can say Khalafa Ahmed Yusuf, which means that what happened? You just had an Arabic class. Khalafa Ahmed Yusuf. Who succeeded who? Ahmed succeeded Yusuf. He came after him. Yeah, he succeeded him. So the Khalifa is the one who succeeded the one who came before him in rulership and authority. That's the Khalifa. And the purpose in the Islamic sense of the Khalifa is deputyship on the earth. To establish the deen is based upon 2 principles. The Khilafah or the Caliphate is based upon 2 principles, as is mentioned by Al-Maradudi, as is mentioned by Ibn Khaldun, as is mentioned by Al-Juwayni, as is mentioned by the scholars or who authored books on governorship, siyasa shar'iyya, and on the issue of choosing a Islamic ruler. There's a number of main books. One of the main ones is a book by Maradudi on I think it's called Ahkam Sultaniyya or along these lines, and it speaks about this particular topic. And Ibn Khaldun speaks about it as well. Khaldun. What they say that they all say that the Khilafah meaning Islamically is based upon 2 principles. Number 1, preserving the deen, the religion, and number 2, governance of the worldly affairs of the community. These 2 principles, preserving the deen and governance of the worldly affairs of the people. So you find, you come across the phrase, for example, balancing deen with dunya, or, deen before dunya. You find all these phrases, it pertains to what? What does it pertain to? It pertains to a person, a Muslim, giving precedence to his religion and not selling out his religion for the dunya. That's what you're speaking about. But ultimately, your success in your deen is based upon your activities in the dunya, because you don't live outside of the dunya. You can't remove yourself from the dunya. What you can do is remove the dunya from your heart, meaning you're not attached to it, but you can't remove yourself outside the dunya because your success in your deen is dependent on your actions in the dunya. This is generally the definition of the Khilaafa, i.e. the Islamic definition of the Khilaafa. As mentioned by Ibn Khaldun, he says preserving the religion, governance of the worldly affairs. Al-Maradudi says the same definition. He says the leadership takes the prophetic caliphate in the preservation of the religion and governance of the worldly affairs. And there's many other statements from other scholars. Now, in addition to that, this is the first issue. That's the meaning. The second issue regards to the hukum of appointing a khalifa, or the hukum of appointing a khalifa. The hukum of appointing a khalifa is that it's wajib. It's wajib. And this is based upon ijma' of the ummah. So there's consensus of the ummah that it's an obligation to appoint a khalifa. And it's an obligation to obey the khalifa and to be unified under his word. Which means this is implementing the Islamic rulings, the punishment for crimes, to make jihad against the enemy with him. And then the author continues speaking about the ruling. He says the interests and benefits of people cannot be realized except by the appointment of a khalifa. Without a khalifa, both the deen and the dunya is lost. So the issue of having a leader is a human necessity and also proven by sound reasoning. Okay, the first thing is, what we're speaking about now is people, they need to be governed. Otherwise, you have chaos. So you need to have rules, you need to have consequences for people that break the rules. This is standard. This is across the dunya. And this has always been the case. And this is known by, number one, evidence from the Quran, Sunnah, and Ijma', but also by sound reasoning, and also by necessity. There's the verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the author mentions, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasulu wa ati'u rasulu ulil amri minkum. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasula wa ulil amri minkum. In this verse, Allah says, are you who believe, obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those in authority amongst you. This word ulil amri, this is wilaya, which is synonymous with imama, which is synonymous with sultan, which is synonymous with khalifa. These words are synonymous. They have this similar meaning. So when it says to obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those in authority amongst you, Imam Tabari, after discussing the statements of the Salaf in explanation of this verse, he mentioned regarding those in authority, the most correct explanation is that they are the rulers and the ministers, al-umara and al-wulat. In line with the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ that command obedience to the rulers and leaders in that which is obedience to Allah and for the benefit of the general Muslims. So that's the first verse I want you to, okay, this is what you need to write down, verse 459. Surah Al-Imran, ayat number 59. Surah An-Nisa, ayat number 59. That verse. The second verse, which you need to know and memorize and as a evidence when you're discussing this mas'ala with people that may be upon a deviated path, is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. This verse, it says, when a matter comes to them of security or fear, insecurity, a public security or fear, they spread it around. But if they had referred it back to the messenger or to those in authority amongst them, then the ones that can draw the correct conclusions from it would have known about it. Imam Tabari, he mentioned, if they had referred, it means the affair is referred back to Allah's Messenger ﷺ and those in authority over them, i.e. their Muslim leaders. Their Muslim leaders. And also, this verse, it shows that people are of two types. What it means is that the issues which are pertaining to governance, they go back to those that are in authority. They don't go back to any and every single Muslim. So you have the lay people, and you have those that are in a position of authority and leadership. And the ayah, it clearly commands to refer back to those that are in authority and those that are in leadership. Now, this is evidence for what? The hukum of the obligation of there being people, a Khilaafa, as is the previous ayah as well. But it's also evidence in showing that the people that are the ones that are going to make decisions and extract rulings pertaining to governance and issues that relate to the ummah isn't just anyone that appoints himself, but it's something which is specific to those that are in authority and in leadership. Okay, that's from the Quran. From the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radhiallahu anhu, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if three of you go out on a journey, then let one of you be the emir. This hadith, it pertains to what? It pertains to a small group. Okay, min bab al-awla, if there's three people, you need an emir for just three people, because what's going to happen, there's going to be differences. You're going to say, let's take Uber. Someone else says, let's take a bus. Someone else says, let's walk. What do? One takes Uber, one takes bus, and one walks, and you differ. Everyone goes off on their own thing, does their own thing. No. Whoever's the emir, he's appointed, he makes a final decision when you differ. And that does what? That brings about unity. Unity. So not everyone going off on their own, doing their own thing. Not everyone's going together, which is the objective of the religion. So that hadith, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions, verily the rule of the people is from the most important of religious obligations. Rather, the religious and worldly affairs cannot be established without governance, as the interests of humankind cannot be fulfilled except by a community to fulfill one another's needs. And for every community there must be a leader, as the Prophet ﷺ said, if three of you go out on a journey, then appoint a leader from amongst yourself. Collected by Abu Dawood and related by Abu Sa'id and Abu Hurairah. Imam Ahmad collected a hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, it is not permissible for three people to be in the desert, i.e. in the wilderness, except that one of them is a leader over them. Therefore, the Prophet ﷺ obligated appointing a leader in a small community on a journey to indicate by that the obligation in all the other larger types of community and congregation. So do you understand the istidlal of the hadith? So the hadith, where you have a small community, whether they're in the wilderness by themselves or going on a travel, there's an obligation to appoint a leader, then this indicates, it's an ishara, it's one of the, and is by analogy, a larger community and a larger congregation needs to have a leader over them. Also, there's another hadith which is important in this bab. What you don't need to have, for example, 15 ayat, 15 hadith. You need the main ones, memorize them, learn them, and stick to them. You don't need to, because those are the foundations and the principles. There's another hadith which is very important in this chapter, where Ibn Umar said, I heard the Messenger of Allah say, whoever removes his hand from obedience to the ruler will meet Allah on the Day of Judgment without proof, and whoever dies without having a pledge of allegiance will die a death of jahiliyyah. That's the other hadith, which is one of the main hadith on this topic, to show what? To show that there's the obligation of there being a leader who's followed and who's obeyed in that which is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These ayats and ahadith, that's what they indicate. So, like I said, there's consensus on the obligation of there being a leader. There's not something that two Muslims differ about or should differ about. So that's not the point of discussion. If you're having a debate or you're discussing this mas'ala with someone, they say, oh, you don't want a Khilaafa. Who said that? They say, you lot are against the Khilaafa. Who said that? You lot don't say the Khilaafa is wajib. Who said that? That's not the point of debate. That's not the point of debate. Why? Because if you used to say that, no, we don't need the Khilafah, you're going against ijma', and you're walking towards the door. That door takes you outside of Islam. That's what you're doing basically. So be careful what you're saying when you're speaking to people. Imam Nawawi says, there is scholarly consensus that it's an obligation for the Muslims to appoint a Khalifa. Scholarly, and this is a statement of all of the Imam. Okay, the issue which is under discussion is having more than one Khalifa or not. And if there is more than one Khalifa, what's the situation, what's the circumstance? Like the time we live in now, the reality of how we live in this moment in time. That's the issue what's up for discussion, and that's the issue which you find if you're not going to say that. If they go to say, okay, there's no Khalifa, there's no leader, there's no authority, there's no obedience to anyone, you're going to say that, no, that's not true. I can see you're Muhajirun and you're upon Hizb Tahrir or you're upon something else. Because that's their qawl. Now, so there's a statement basically where or the discussion is that whenever the Muslims are together in a country or a continent, then it's an obligation for them to appoint a leader over them where they are unified under his authority, as the Muslim interests and benefits cannot be achieved without there being a community, and there's no community without a leader. The mas'ala is that the appointment of the Khalifa, the leader, it's a means to achieving a goal, which is the establishment of the religion and the governance of the people. The goal is to establish the religion. The goal is to have governance of the people, for the hudud to be established and the like. And the Khalifa is a means to that. Without a leader, it's called what? Socialism or communism. Without a leader, it's called chaos, basically. Meaning that you do what you want, 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 and nobody's under any authority. Everyone's a chief and there's no Indians, basically. There's a statement of a poet, pre-Islamic poet, he says, mankind is not suited to chaos and not having a leader, and there is no leader for them if the ignorant ones are leading them. That's another important point as well. Coming back to who the leaders are. The leaders aren't just anybody that jumps up and appoints himself and says, I fancy myself a Khalifa of the Muslims. I think I meet the criteria, so follow me. Don't worry about that leader, because, he's got a bank in his country, so he's a kafir. Don't worry about that leader, because he's got this, so he's a kafir. But, alhamdulillah, I'm the Khalifa Rashid. I'm the new, they can lead you all to establishing the Sharia 100% like that. The point is, that statement is ignorance, generally speaking. It's not in line with the waqi', with the situation, the reality of the situation. So going back to the statement of the poet, mankind is not suited to chaos and not having a leader. Means that getting my huquq from you giving me my rights, if you deny me them, how are they going to be established? How are they going to be established? If there's no authority, then I'll come and I'll oppress you. Then you'll go and you'll oppress my brother. Then my brother will go and oppress your uncle will go and oppress your... And then it's dhulm. And as you know, dhulm dhulumat yawm al-qiyamah. Oppression is darkness on Day of Judgment. So, generally speaking, the statements of the scholars that speak about appointing a leader, it's general. It's not just specific to if all the Muslims are united in one place. No. It's wherever the Muslims are, they have to have somebody that's going to lead over there and govern them. Even if they're in two, one's in east and one's in the west. As you're going to see later, what's not allowed, or the issue which is a problem, is not being under a Khalifa that's different to the Khalifa in the other side of the world. The issue is trying to give bay'ah to both of them. You can't obviously be a servant of two masters, for want of a better word. or for want of a better analogy. And that's going to be discussed later. In any case, the principle is this: it's impermissible for a community of Muslims in any place to remain without a imam or a leader who they are united under his word, who they advise, meaning those that are in responsibility to advise, and they follow and they are under their authority and obedience. So when you go back to the hadith about having bay'ah, the hadith, then it shows that the Muslims have to be united under an authority. Okay, so the second point we've just covered it speaks about the evidences. Those 4 evidences, you should memorize them, you need to know them. They're the main ones, basically. There's others as well that speak about, for example, إِنِّي جَاءَ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً in Surah Al-Baqarah, that I'm going to appoint on the earth a Khilaafa, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to the angels about the Adam alayhi salam, and everyone that succeeds after. So it speaks about, for example, it gives you an indication towards the purpose of is to make Islah. The purpose of the Khalifa is to make, to establish justice, is to rectify. It gives you these things. But these are in the books of fiqh. We're speaking about from a manhaj and aqidah perspective. Okay, when you look at the next point is looking at the origins of the Islamic Caliphate and means of its establishment. The reality, the origins of it and the means of its establishment. The author, he says that it's well known that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the message that concluded all revelations, completing the incomplete in previous ones, so that a complete beneficial sharia, i.e. a code for a complete way of life, came that is suitable for all time, clarifying the truth in the clearest of explanations. So the Prophet ﷺ fulfilled what Allah charged him with regarding conveying the revelation, having patience in carrying out Allah's commands so that Allah established the deen, gave the Prophet ﷺ authority in the land, and gave him the final victory over his enemies. The Prophet ﷺ did not depart from this worldly life, except that the entire Arabian Peninsula was under his authority, and having sent his messengers to the kings and leaders of the rest of the world at the time, the kingdoms, the empires. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ lived how long? 63 years. How many of that was a messenger and a prophet? 23 years. So how many of those 23 years was calling to Tawheed? How many of it was establishing the ahkam or the hudud? 13 years calling to Tawheed, and 10 years establishing the hudud and the ahkam. By the time the Messenger of Allah ﷺ passed away, the entire Arabian Peninsula had accepted and embraced Islam, and the Messenger of Allah had also sent armies as well as messages and messengers to the rest of the other empires, whether it's the Persian Empire or the Roman Empire, inviting them to what? Inviting them to Tawheed, enter into Islam, isn't it? Aslim, Taslim. Enter into Islam, have security, be safe, basically. Yeah? Enter into Islam with what? Tawheed. With the kalima, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ began his mission calling to Tawheed, and the Messenger of Allah ﷺ made the entire mission calling to Tawheed. And that was before the establishment of the Islamic State, for want of a better word. No. With regards to the way in which a state is established, i.e. the means to attain the Khalifa or the Caliphate, which everybody wants, this is where you find that groups, they have deviated and gone astray. The methodology, the correct methodology, you have two. You have the methodology of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and you have the methodology of Ahlul Ahzab wal Ahwa wal Bid'ah. You have the methodology of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and the methodology of the people of innovation and desires. The methodology of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is based upon rectification and calling to Tawheed. And the establishment of the Khilafah is a consequence of that. It's from Allah. It's from Allah. Meaning that Allah is the one who gives people authority on the earth because they worship Him alone and don't associate partners in worship. That's the way of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The way of the deviated groups is that they turn it around, do the other way around. They say you have to establish authority on the earth. That's the objective. You have to establish authority on the earth. And they say that this is the goal. That's the main objective and that's the main goal, to establish authority on the earth. If you look at when you look at and reflect over the Quran and the verses in there, you see that all of it shows that Allah is the one that established authority for the Muslims on the earth. And it's as a result of their worshipping Him and not associating partners in worship with Allah. In the verse in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم وليمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم وليبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني ولا يشركون بي شيئا. This verse, ومن كفر بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الفاسقون. This verse, it says Allah has promised those who have believed amongst you and done righteous deeds that He will surely grant them succession upon the earth, i.e. authority. Just as He granted it to those before them, and that He will surely establish for them their religion which He has preferred for them, and that He will surely substitute for them after their fear security. Why? Because they worship Me and they don't associate partners in worship. What's the illah, or what's the cause, or what's the reason for that consequence? Worshipping Allah. So if you want to build it in a different way, meaning don't worry about the shirk that is taking place, ignore it. Let them worship graves, because that's not harming the Muslim Ummah. What's harming the Muslim Ummah is not having a Khalifa. This is the methodology of the Hizb ut-Tahrir and Muhajirun and Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and this is a methodology. Ignore that. Ignore that, because the bigger thing, in other words, shirk of the qubur, associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling upon the dead, saint worship, all of this stuff isn't important because we haven't got a Khalifa. So we can ignore that, and the main thing is hukum bi ghayri ma anzal Allah. That's the main thing, basically. So this is their methodology, and this is the methodology. In his explanation, Imam al-Shanqiti, who's the author of Adwa al-Bayan, he mentions that he will give them succession on the earth. The verses indicate that obedience to Allah with belief in Him and righteous actions are a direct reason for authority and power in the lands. That's Imam Shanqiti. He's got the tafsir called Adwa al-Bayan. Imam Sa'di, he mentions in tafsir of this verse, Allah has promised them these things when the verse was sent down, during a time that they did not have authority and power or ability to establish the way of Islam in complete security, where they could worship Allah alone without partners in worship, where they were unafraid of anyone besides Allah. Then in the early period of this ummah, they established their belief in Allah and righteous actions such that they rose up above all others, and Allah gave them authority in the land. They liberated the east and the west, and they attained full security and authority. This is from the clearly amazing signs of Allah, and it will continue to remain so until Judgment Day. Whoever believes in Allah and does good actions necessitates the attainment of what Allah has promised them. Disbelievers and hypocrites only reign over them and sometimes have the upper hand over them due to Muslims' own shortcomings in their belief and good actions. Then there's another statement of Shaykh al-Albani rahmatullah alayhi, where he mentions, and this is the difference, and he highlights the difference between the people of innovation and the people of sunnah, where he says the du'at who want to achieve the primary goal of establishing Allah's rulership on the earth with a righteous caliphate on the model of the past Khilaafa, which every Muslim agrees is an obligation to attain, but differ on the means to achieve the aim. Because we Salafis, we are with them in the obligation and the primary goal. However, we are not with them in their methodology. Our methodology is that beneficial knowledge and good actions are necessary shurut. They're prerequisites, they're conditions for achieving this aim. He says beneficial knowledge is based upon Allah's book, the authentic sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the understanding of the righteous predecessors, and acting according to this knowledge. Those are the things. If every Muslim alive today came together upon this beneficial knowledge, but they did not act according to that knowledge, they will not attain their goal of establishing the rule of Allah in the land, as somebody missing something will not be given the thing he desires. Therefore, we are with everybody calls for the establishment of Allah's rule on earth and the realization of what is today called al-hakimiyya for Allah alone, without partners. However, we differ with them completely in the methodology. Our method is long and drawn out. There is this short and deviated from the straight path, which the Prophet ﷺ showed in a beautiful illustration when he drew the straight path in a long straight line in sand, and then he drew short paths deviated on either side, and he said that all of these deviations is a satanic path, and they assume they will reach their goal of realizing Allah's rule on earth, but they are not ways about bringing about good, because the way that leads to good is one way, basically. So everyone that deviates and takes a different way, with the objective, the intention is to do something which is Islamic. The point is it's not the straight path, they're not going to reach their objective. Why? Because, he says, the way that leads to good is one way. That is, there's no other way for it, because it's revelation from the sky, from Allah to the heart of Allah's messenger. Therefore, it cannot accept multiple ways. Like an analogy of the one who sent the revelation is Allah, meaning Allah's alone, singular. Likewise, the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Is also alone and singular. It's not a number of ways. So that being the case, the Shaykh is speaking about the methodology of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah compared to, so this is the most important thing, is the manhaj and the methodology of the Khilaafa or attaining the Khilaafa. The next point to discuss is evidence to show that the objective is to worship Allah, and the means to do that is establishing a Khilafah. It's a means, but it's not the goal in and of itself. Why? How many messengers were sent before? How many messengers? Prophets and messengers. We don't know the exact number, but we know loads. Were they all leaders and had authority on the earth? But did they worship Allah? Are they going to paradise? Did they fulfill the goal and objective of part of the message that they came with? Yes. So if you have prophets and messengers, like Yusuf alayhi salam, Yusuf alayhi salam is a prime example, prophet and messenger. Did he establish law and have authority? No. But he was a minister. But a minister under a non-Muslim king. Minister under a non-Muslim king. Isn't it? Did he fulfill the objective and goal of calling people to Islam, calling people to Tawheed? Did he fulfill the goal of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But was he given kingship and authority? No. And that's the same for a number of prophets and messengers. Not every messenger was a king and had authority. Yet they fulfilled the goal of the message, which was calling people to worship Allah and not to associate partners in worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what's happened? What's happened is, as obviously the distance from revelation time-wise is far, the people have forgotten the goal and are focused purely on the means, which is the Khilaafa, and use that as a vehicle to call people to politics and siyasa, fundamentally. That's what's happened. So they've become preoccupied with the means in the mistaken belief that the means is the goal, and this is a condition of most of the various groups and the parties who built their foundations and creed on the obligation of the du'at striving to establish the Khilaafa. So they made establishing the Khilaafa their primary aim and objective, and at the same time they neglected calling people to Tawheed and to worship Allah alone. Also, they neglected warning against shirk and its different manifestations, in spite of the fact that it's widespread in the Muslim community. It's widespread in the Muslim community. So much so, if you used to look at their books or their works or their efforts, you won't find any, if at all, a small amount of attempts and efforts to call people to Tawheed and to warn people away from shirk. And this is the primary objective of all the revelations, not just the message of the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, there's a statement of Abu al-Hasan al-Nadawi. He's got a book as well on Khilaafa. These quotes are from books which are specifically on this topic. He says, after clarifying the importance and obligation of the Khilaafa in Islam, he mentioned, however, while being of great significance, meaning the establishment of the Khilaafa, that does not remove the fact that it is a means to an objective of greater significance. Known to those who study the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in depth, and they are distinguished with a firm grounding in knowledge and a comprehensive understanding of the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the statements of the Sahaba, meaning the call to Tawheed and the warning against ash-shirk. Okay, what's the purpose of this? The aim of this is not to belittle the issue of the Khilafah, i.e. the fact that all Muslims should and it's ideal for them to be united under a single Imam, as no one is in doubt of its obligation, significance and impact. However, the objective is to make sure the Muslims are occupied with that which is a greater obligation upon them, and that's the reason, the basis for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them, which is His worship alone without ascribing partners, as this is a specific obligation on every individual and community. Especially in times when many of the Muslims have left many aspects of the rights of Allah and worship alone. Okay, when it comes to obligations, alhamdulillah, you're all students, you're all studying. You understand there's two types of obligations. Obligations which are fardul ayn and obligations which are fardul kifaya. Things which are requested from you as an individual to do, and things which are requested from the community to establish. From the things which are fardul ayn is worship Allah without partners, praying, zakat. It's not an obligation, and this is the point of the author, for every da'i and for every Muslim to seek the establishment of the Khilafah. Pay attention. There's two things. There's unity of the Muslim community, and there's unity of the Muslim Ummah. As an individual obligation, we're all obliged to help one another, to support one another, and to establish unity in our community. With regards to the unity of the Muslim Ummah, then the people that are responsible for that are those that are in authority over you. Meaning, when the issue of safety and fear comes to them, then they return it back to the messenger and those who are in authority amongst them. And then those that have the knowledge will deduce the rulings from it. Yeah. So, if we talk about what you have the ability and capacity to do, then from common sense, it doesn't take a neuroscientist, or for example, a super brainy engineer of some sort, to know and to understand that ordering someone to do something which is extremely difficult or impossible doesn't bring about any benefit whatsoever. It doesn't bring about benefit. If I said to you, for example, to do something which is almost impossible, if not impossible, what benefit is there in that command to you? There's no benefit whatsoever. So when it comes to the discussions related to governance and state, then these are from the affairs of the people of influence and power. which is Ahlul Hil wal Aqd, Al-Ulil Amr minhum. It's not for every single layperson. It's not for every single layperson. It's not even for the du'at. It's not even for the du'at to be, for example, sitting down and let's discuss how we're going to get a Khalifa for the Muslim Ummah. We're here in London, for example, Abu Salama, Ustaz Saeed. Let's sit down and discuss how we're going to get the Khilaafa. What benefit? What's my position? Am I a minister? Do I have a position of governance? Can I write a report and the Prime Minister is going to read it and say, okay, let's do that? And does he consult me for anything? Does he talk to me? Does he have my phone number? Do I have his phone number? There's no connection whatsoever. It's not my position. So why busy myself or other people with something which is outside of their influence and outside of their control? And they're not commanded with, most importantly. Most importantly, they're not commanded with it. And then take them away from what? Don't worry about, for example, the Sunnah. Don't worry about shirk. That's not important. This is a major thing. Hakimiyah. This is a major thing, the Khilaafa. Something they have no power about, and this is ajib. I don't know if I told you this story last time, but I'll quickly. When I went to, how long have I got? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 25 minutes. Okay, alhamdulillah. If I'm rushing, slow me down as well, because I'm going to end up rushing shortly to finish the content. When I did a English degree at Roehampton University, so as a mature student, 23 or whatever when I started. When the first year, you're looking for the ISOC office. It's a small university. They've got a small Islamic ISOC. They don't have that many Muslims there. So I've gone there, and it's a Jummah, and I've doing the khutbah, and I'm speaking about hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And afterwards, there's a guy that's there. His intention was good. I don't know him. He comes up to me and he goes, about the khutbah. He's speaking about the Sunnah. That's not, people. That's too complicated. That's too deep for people. That's what he said. Listen to this. He said they need to know about the Khilaafa. He goes, politics, what they live in. They need to know about the Khilaafa, the Muslim rulers, and these two things. And I thought to myself, you've taken something which is more complicated and complex, that has no truth in it, that you're going to ever be able to find out generally in your position as a student at Roehampton University to talk about, not involved in the conversations that happen when decisions are made. A lot of them are made, behind closed doors, obviously. And what we see is not. And you're telling me that's easier for people to understand than the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So anyway, talking to him. Who's he a member of? Hizb ut-Tahrir, obviously. And this was the harm, because they were very active in universities. Very active in universities back in the day. Alhamdulillah, now it's more the field or the Midan is a bit more balanced now. You have, for example, alhamdulillah, people upon Quran and Sunnah and way of the Salaf, and you have, for example, others. But Hizb ut-Tahrir, they kind of been shut out a lot, which is good. But they were active. And they were the ones that had hold of the ISOCs, and that's why you find a lot of the people that went to university at my age, or when I went to university, they all lean towards Hizb ut-Tahrir. It's a reality. I'm not saying it's a principle, when did you go to university? Okay, if you went to university in that age, you're going to label them, you have to be Muhajirun, Hizb ut-Tahrir. No, not at all. Don't ever make judgments like that. Also, another point, I know I've digressed a bit. Don't make judgments on the person just because when you see them, okay, look, he's praying and his hands are praying here, so he's muqtadi, he's not upon the correct way. Don't make judgments based upon how you see a person. Speak to them. Let him expose his manhaj through his statements before you make a judgment on the person. Another quick story, and this is really important, how you deal with people. Because especially as Salafis, you got people look at you and say, these people are harsh and they just make rudud, and all they do is they don't have any mu'amala, all these things which are out there. Some of them could be true, some of them obviously are not true. It's an individual, it's not the manhaj. I remember when I first went to the Jamia, this is Medina, and apologies if I've told you this story already, okay, if you've heard it before. I went to the first day or the first week I prayed in the Jamia Masjid. And there was a brother that I saw the year before. He got accepted that year. I got accepted the year afterwards. It took me 2 years to get accepted. I applied twice. So he's there. And back then, he was Sufi Tablighi. In the space of a year, he became, MashaAllah, Salafi, proper, like, on the manhaj. Yeah, Salafi Quh. He said, he's like, I've just come in. He said, look at that person over there. Literally, this is a conversation. Assalamu alaikum. Look at that person over there, folks. Is that it? We're going to straight into it. No, like, how you doing? How you been? MashaAllah, it's good to be in Medina. Straight into it. He goes, look how he's praying, look where his hands are. And that was it. He's Hanafi Deobandi because he prays his hands below his navel. That was it. That's the hukam, just based upon the person, how he prays. That's incorrect. That's incorrect. It could be a case that the person, number one, he doesn't know. It could be Salafi, but his hands are heavy that day. So hey, it's possible. It's possible. You're holding your hands, he's praying long. Imagine he's proper. It could be a Zahid, Abid, proper. Better than everyone in the masjid. But he's been praying for long. His hands are getting weak. They've gone below his butt. And look at him and say, look at him. He's Hanafi Deobandi because of that. So the digression is important because when it comes to making judgment upon people, make sure it's the last thing you do. Don't let it be the first thing you do. You haven't spoken to them. You haven't seen them. You've just heard about them. Don't make judgments upon people unless you have, strong burhan in front of people. And that's what we say to the takfiris. You're going to say this person's a kafir. Look at the hukum shari'i you've made. Where's your burhan yawm al-qiyamah? The person prays. He says, La ilaha illallah. He says, Muhammad Rasulullah. And he prays his prayers and he fasts. And you don't see shirk from him. And you're going to say he's a kafir, murtad, mukhrij min al-millah. So hukum shari'i is big. So anyway, going back to the point, when it comes to dealing with other people who are perhaps deviated, for example, or you may sense they're deviated, but sensing is not, you need evidence. You can't say, I smell a whiff of deviation upon him. I smell a whiff of, what is that? But in the Quran, does it say the whiff of deviation make hukum on a person? It has to be based upon what they say, and then based upon knowing the hukum of that statement from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then going back to the point, the principle is that when it comes to establishing the Khilaafa, we're talking about unity of the Muslim Ummah. That's an individual obligation upon all of us. We work together, ta'awunu ala al-birr wa taqwa, and we want Ummah. But establishing the Khilaafa is not the job of Fard al-Ain on every single individual. No, it's the responsibility of those that are in authority. What's the evidence? Goes back to the ayat that we mentioned before. What's the ayat? إِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوْ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. This is the people on misguidance. Any issue, publicize it, cause fitna, cause fasad. What does Allah say? وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَّا الرُّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. If they only turned it back to Allah and His Messenger, what would have happened? What would have happened? They would know. The people who have knowledge, they would know and they will come with the right answers and then conclusions for the issues. So, in explanation to this verse, Muhammad Rashid Ridda, in explanation of the verse, he said, the layman entering into politics and issues related to war and peace, security and threat is a common fact which is extremely harmful if they become preoccupied with it from their work, i.e. their ibadah, like issues of public security and insecurity. And other political and public matters are the job of the specific people rather than the general people. That's the principle. That's the principle. Imam Sa'di said, this is a proof for the principle. When there happens to be research in a particular field or area is necessary, it must be fulfilled by someone who is qualified, and others should not put themselves forward in their place, as the qualified people are the ones that are more likely to reach the correct conclusion and least likely to make a mistake. The problem we have in the West, as a principle, and it's based upon our education system and our bi'ah, and this is why you find a lot of the deviants that are calling for example, khuruj and hakimiyya, they're people that educated themselves in the West and then went back to the East and compared the West to the East and started making takfir of the hukam and the like. Or they've been educated in the West and they stayed out of the East so they can set up a base in which they can make political change. This is the case with almost all of them. The reality is that we believe that our opinion matters in everything that we can have an opinion in, generally speaking. Meaning that someone comes up to you and he speaks to you about, I'm feeling a headache. He'll be like, don't take this, do that. Someone comes up to you and he says, for example, something else to do with your car. It will say, it's because it's that car, not that car. Okay, is he a doctor and a mechanic? Then you come to about the religion and he says, issue to do with, he's fallen out of a brother over a business thing. And he says to him, that's wrong, this is Hukum Shari, he did wrong, you should make hajr of him. So now he's a doctor, he's a mechanic, and he's a scholar as well. How? And this is part of the bid'ah that we live in, that we believe that our opinion can be in anything we want it to have. Okay, what happens with that is, if that person listened to that one person who's a doctor, mechanic, and a scholar, in all those three things, how likely is he going to ruin his life or make it good? He's likely going to ruin his life. That person is going around causing fasad. Why? Because he's speaking about that which he hasn't got knowledge. He's giving advice in his opinion about that which he's not qualified. He's not qualified. And this is the reality. A person that's qualified, if he's going to speak on the matter and the subject, he's more likely to be correct than somebody who is, let's say, self-appointed, self-qualified, self-certificated, or whatever it is, self-experienced, that person who's appointed himself. And that's the principle, which is why when it comes to issues, especially issues which are big issues of fear, of security and fear, basically, these are ummah issues, then you have to take it back to the people that are in authority. It's not something that, and however, cooperating and helping each other, that's something which is an individual obligation upon everybody. Okay, I'm going to skip a bit. Inshallah, like I said, the book it's not difficult reading, so I want to speak about the issue of the last issue, which is the different ideologies or the deviations and the sources of these deviations. What's the source of this ideology? i.e., making the call to establish the Khilaafa being the objective instead of the means to establish the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. Knowing that the companions, when they made a hijrah to Habasha, for example, they were able to practice religion, worship Allah, they fulfilled the objective, and there wasn't a Khilaafa. They wasn't under a Khilaafa which was ruling by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed. So this chapter is chapter number, it's not numbered, page 82 in the book. It says, many of the callers to Islam are of the opinion that it is an obligation on the students of knowledge to strive to establish the Khilafah by uniting the Muslims under one ruler who has authority over all Muslim lands. Moreover, many of them even claim it is the greatest obligation in the current time, and they make the Sharia objectives and rulings connected to the presence of a Khilafah. Okay, two things here, 2 points. Number one, they say it's an obligation for everyone to establish a Khilafah. That's 1 point. A single Khilafah for all of the Muslims. The reality is, since the earliest times, the Messenger of Allah, there's a hadith that mentions, after Prophet there'd be the Khilafah, righteous Khilafah, then there'll be muluk, kings. Then there'll be kingship. The Khilaafa ended when? Ali ibn Abi Talib. After that it was kings. And you had the Umayyi, and then you had the Abbasi period, then you had the, what's after that? The Fatimid period, and then you had the Ottoman period. These are the periods of we're speaking about the Khilafah. Okay. From the moment, throughout history, there's always been times, when we're speaking about the kings, generally speaking, there's always been moments and times when there's been more than one Imam of the Muslims. Historically, there's been times when there's been more than one Imam. Lots of times, for whatever reason. Either because of differences or because of distance. Whatever the reason is. And it's just a fact. It's just the reality of the situation. Okay, what's the ideal situation? The ideal situation, if there's two Imams, they make Salah come under one. Or they come under one. That's the ideal situation. Failing that, if it doesn't happen, then each community, they are under the authority of the Imam that they're under. They can't have bay'ah with both of them, that goes without saying, but they're under the authority of the one that they're under. And this is a statement of the scholars from past, i.e. the permissibility of there being more than one Imam for the Muslims at times when there is a necessity, meaning that it's not possible for them to be two. Why? Because the result other than that is what? Fighting and bloodshed. And that's something which is also impermissible. So in those times, then it's everyone obeys and listens to the Imam that he's under, that he has bay'ah to. So anyway, that's the first point. The second thing that they have, so the first thing is this is what they claim. It goes against history and it goes against reality, basically. And it goes against the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in regards to there being one Khilafah or there being Muluk. The second issue that the author mentions, he says, moreover, many of them claim that it's the greatest obligation in the current time, and they make the Sharia objectives and rulings connected to the presence of a Khilafah. Meaning what? Meaning that there's no... They suspend the Sharia, full stop themselves, but they say that there's no Sharia unless you're under a Khalifa. And there's no Khalifa for all of the Muslims, so there's no obligation for Salat and Jama'ah, there's no obligation for this, and there's no obligation for that. They suspend, that's what it means. That's what it means. So this is some of them, not all of them. Those with these assumptions do not differentiate between the role of the people of power and influence and the role of the majority of people and regular students of knowledge. So mixing these two issues and not differentiating between the various ranks of people and their responsibilities leads to making obligatory something which is not an obligation, prohibiting something which is not prohibited, and vice versa. This assumption is the main reason that after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Islamic partisan groups like Ikhwan al-Muslimin, Hizb ut-Tahrir and others that are either a branch of these two groups or established after them, including Dawah organizations that claim Salafiyah, came about. The groups and parties, public and secret, started based on the premise that it is the only way to re-establish the caliphate. Even you find, for example, the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, generally speaking, they have this obsession with the Ottoman Empire. You know, we have to go back to, that was the last Khilafah, as if during that time there wasn't any other leaders who were followed that weren't with the Ottoman Empire. That's the first thing. Also the second thing, and this highlights the fallacy of their dawah, and that it's not the dawah of the messengers and the prophets. During the Ottoman period, especially towards the ends of it, the things that they are complaining about now and criticizing, for example, was prevalent and rampant in the Ottoman Empire. First, grave worship and shirk was prevalent. It was rampant in the Ottoman Empire. Drinking, khamar, these things, it was prevalent. It's not like it wasn't prevalent, it wasn't there. The worst thing is that the deen of the empire was based upon Sufiya and grave worship of the highest levels of the worst type, saint worship. Anyway, but ignore that. It's not important. This is this amazing empire, Ottoman Empire. That's not to say it doesn't have its good aspects. Don't get me wrong. That's not to say it doesn't have good aspects. The point we're getting at is that the example that they give highlights the fallacy of their dawah, or the reality of their dawah, that their dawah is a political dawah and not a dawah to tawheed and to worship in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. It's a dawah to politics and siyasa. Because if it was, then they wouldn't be holding up the Ottoman Empire as the ideal model of they'd be speaking about what? Khulafa al-Rashideen. The Khalifa of Abdulaziz, the fifth Khalifa Rashida, for example. That's the example. As Salafis, when we speak about the Caliphate or the Khilaafa, what do we speak about? Khulaf Abu Bakr, Umar, the Sahaba. That's the example, that's the model. We don't speak about, for example, after that is Tariq. That's Tariq, the Umayyad, the Abbasi period. It's not like, okay, you get benefits from it. From, for example, the Mihna of Imam Ahmed, you get benefits from the role of the relationship. But with regards to the actual, the model, you don't say the Ottoman Empire. That's the last of that's going to be the worst because it's the furthest away from revelation. It's going to be the worst. That's, again, I'm not saying that it doesn't have its benefits. Because that's what's going to be attacked. You lot are just anti-Erdogan or something, they're going to be saying. We're pro-Saudi, anti-Erdogan, and there's all these other political things that people come about with. This assumption is the main reason that the Ikhwan Muslimin Hizb ut-Tahrir, and it's going to mention the ideology. This ideology in its origins came about due to a misunderstanding and deficiency in the understanding of the reality of Tawheed and restricting it to Al-Hakimiyyah. So this is the Nubdha. The Nubdha is this one thing. The people of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, Hizb ut-Tahrir, what they do, they say Tawheed is Hakimiyyah. Meaning implementing the Sharia punishments. That's what it means. To this extent, they invented a fourth category of Tawheed, calling it Tawheed al-Hakimiyyah, where we find they explain the word al-ilah to mean al-hakim. And they make al-hukum the most specific attribute of rububiyyah and the central point of uluhiyyah. This is the principle that they deviate on. So when they say al-ilah, they mean al-hakim. When they say rububiyyah, they mean, for example, legislation, and this is the central point of ubudiyyah and uluhiyyah. This mistaken understanding of theirs has led to making takfir of Muslim societies, not acknowledging the authority of the Muslim rulers by not holding obedience to them an obligation. It is the starting point for the idea of making secret organizations and groups as a way to re-establish the Khilaafa. Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, who is considered the main founder of this ideology, said, the essence of uluhiyyah is sultan. That's his statement. He said the essence, either the uluhiyyah, ibadah, tawheed of uluhiyyah, is tawheed of hakimiyyah, is sultan. What he means by sultan is rulership. Therefore, according to his understanding, tawheed of godship, uluhiyyah, means tawheed of hakimiyyah. After relating some verses of the Quran, he goes on to mention all of these verses from the first to the last point to only one central idea, which is that both godship, uluhiyyah, and sultan, hakimiyyah, necessitate one another, and there's no difference between the two. There's no difference between the two. He also mentioned the Quran makes lordship synonymous with rulership and sovereignty, meaning that the tawheed al-rububiyyah and tawheed al-hakimiyyah is the same, meaning that you cannot establish tawheed al-rububiyyah without establishing tawheed al-hakimiyyah, meaning in society. What Sayyid Qutb was affected by the ideology of Mawdudi, so much so that he ended up making wholesale takfir of society and described it as a society of pre-Islamic times, meaning a society of Jahiliyyah, meaning that Allah isn't worshipped upon Tawheed, because that's what pre-Islam is. Islam is Tawheed, pre-Islam is Jahiliyyah without there being Tawheed Shirk. Then Abu al-Hasan al-Nadawi mentioned, refuting, what appears from the works of Mawdudi is that the primary concern is inviting to the political obedience of anybody or submitting to his sovereignty or returning legislation back to him. Based on all this, all of his efforts in writing, yani Mawdudi, when a person analyzes them, he will come to the clear conclusion that the primary focus is shirk in hakimiyyah, and that the hate of shirk in worship will diminish. Meaning that if you focus on the works of Mawdudi and Sayyid Qutb, and that's your source, where you take your knowledge and you drink your information, you're going to look at shirk and ibadah as not being significant. All you're going to focus on is what? The hakim siyasa. This is the issue, i.e. you become only on that thing, because that's what they want you to do, take towards siyasa and away from looking at shirk. These groups and parties, in reality, they rebel against the Muslim community, of which it's an obligation to be a part of. They make wholesale takfir of the Muslim society's rulers and hold their land to be a land of disbelief. Some groups and parties do not resort to takfir, but in their hizbiyah, they not only do they leave the community, but they also oppose the manager of the Salaf in giving dawah. So you've got two levels. You've got the lesser level, you've got the higher level. At the lesser level, the least that they do is that they leave the jama'ah. You find they separate themselves from the jama'ah and they go against the correct methodology in giving dawah. At the worst, they're going to make takfir of the hukam. So don't be surprised. Don't think, for example, you'll be listening to a talk of a takfiri, because he's a takfiri, he just hides it. And he says, no, I haven't made takfir of the hukam. I don't make takfir of the Mamlaka, the Khalij, Pakistan, or I don't make takfir. So how can I be Khariji? That's what he'll say. That's the statements you'll hear. It's not just, there's two levels. There's obviously making takfir, which is judgment. I've told you about judgment already. The other level is leaving the jama'ah and calling to a manhaj different to the manhaj of the Salaf. i.e. calling to open criticizing of the hukam. Worse than that, it's not even the hukam is in the country. But this is, like I said, this is easier when you grow up in the West. Why? Because the bi'ah or the environment allows everyone's game. The Queen's game, for example. And how many times is the Queen mocked in the newspapers? We grow up with the Queen, the Prince, they're always mocked. You can mock anyone, you can speak about anyone. So when you grow up in an environment where you're allowed to openly criticize anybody, then it's no surprise that you're going to now use that ideology and apply it where in the religion where you're going against clear hadith and ayat of the Quran. And there's a principle which is important. I want us all to bear it in mind in our dealings with each other and our understanding of the religion. Beware of your biases. Beware of your biases. Beware. When you find yourself acting a way or saying certain things, question, is this based upon the bias of my environment and education upbringing? Whether it's relationships, like feminism, for example. How a woman behaves, how a man behaves. Because we're affected by our bi'ah. It goes without saying. We're affected by our bi'ah. The question is, if you can recognize the biases of your environment, then inshallah you can stop acting, pretending this is Islamic, and what this is, but in reality it's a Western way of perceiving and acting and behaving. And this is common amongst, how we deal with each other, whether it's relationships or dealings, opinions. Just this issue of itself is an indication of that. And going back to it, it says the correct method to establish the Khilaafa, the way of the Prophet and his companions after him, has already been clarified. How? What's the correct way to establish it? Ibadah, call to Tawheed, knowledge, avoid shirk, fix your actions, and then the consequences, the establishment. Allah's going to makkannakum fil ard. Allah's going to give you authority on the land. It's not the other way around. It will never be the other way around. Singular Allah, worship, forbidden shirk in all its types and categories, persevering upon that and beginning with the rectification of the individual before the government, the home before the society. Allah won't change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sovereign. No one disputes or denies that. And the ard is His ard. No one disputes or denies that. And Allah is the planner. No one disputes or denies that. Allah is the hakim. No one disputes or denies that. So therefore, it's an obligation on all of the du'a to start by calling to Tawheed of Allah before the making of the state and striving for its establishment. The call to Tawheed includes rectification of the Muslim creed and actions, enjoining the right and forbidding evil, the greatest evil being shirk and innovation, giving advice to every Muslim ruler and ruled in the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the other chapter speaks about each of the individual groups. It speaks about Ikhwan al-Muslimin, it speaks about Hizb al-Tahrir, it speaks about the Takfiri Khariji groups. And I've missed out a lot, but inshallah, hopefully it's covered the topic a bit. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Okay, he's late. Okay, any questions or discussion?
I have a question actually. Jazakallah khair for your expounding on this important topic. My question is, based on what you said in regards to a good pointer you noted when you said that, you know, their main arguments or the main sort of da'wah of the political groups today is not related to Tawheed or even sometimes Deen as a whole. It's more political. Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili, as a lot of the students are familiar, he mentioned that nowadays, or there are groups now who are in actual fact Ikhwani methodological groups, but now they've sort of seen how the Ikhwani da'wah, when it first started with Hassan al-Banna, how it got rejected because it had no connection, or how it was deteriorating because it was clear that there weren't much connection with the Tawheed and al-Ilm. So Shaykh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili said nowadays what they do is they connect themselves with Ilm, because they see its importance and how much the people need it now. So you have these people now who come out and they talk about Tawheed, they teach Kashf al-Shubuhat, they teach Kitab al-Tawheed, Usul al-Thalatha, you name it. But they also have those aspects with them. And كيف نميز السؤال, how do we differentiate between, how do we differentiate?
Bismillah. Alhamdulillah, first of all, important principle is not to take knowledge from people that are on a method, have a corrupt manhaj, have a bankrupt manhaj. It doesn't matter if, for example, they look like they're Allamatul Brixton or Birmingham or East London. Doesn't matter. If they're on a corrupt, bankrupt methodology, don't take knowledge from them. Even if they're teaching you Usul al-Thalatha, Kashf al-Shubuhat, Kitab al-Tawheed, all the books that you know are correct books, but their manhaj is corrupt, don't listen to anything from them. It's the first thing. As for knowing and making tamizan, I don't think it's easy. The reason why it's not easy, because like I said before, as a Muslim you have an obligation not to basically just to categorize someone. It has to be based upon knowledge. That's based upon knowledge. That being the case, then in most issues you have to trust your teachers, what they say. I.e., for example, like coming back to the principles, your teacher knows the person. Your teachers, for example, say this person's upon a corrupt methodology because of this and this and this. He's told you as well. I'm the chance to say, okay, I'm going to wait until I go and sit in his lesson and listen for myself and learn for myself and stuff like that. That's one of the ways. For example, the students, that's the reality of the situation with regards to that. Aside from that, Wallahu ta'ala, perhaps you can, inshallah, benefit and add, inshallah, something to that.
Maybe from my personal tajriba, my personal experience, is what I've seen from these people who they now call to Tawheed, they now give importance to knowledge, they now talk about the da'wah of the Rasul. You see them, they also show their side when it comes to certain chapters in those books they're teaching. So if you're talking about Kitab al-Tawheed, when you get to the chapter obeying, they'll give a tafsir that's Ikhwani. So they do concentrate on knowledge, but when the chapters come up, or they teach Bukhari and Muslim, mathalan, you find them teaching ahadith and chapters in Bukhari and Muslim. They'll teach the chapter of al-Ihtisam bi Kitab al-Sunnah. They teach the chapter of adab. They'll teach a chapter of this. Most of the time they'll skip the chapter of where it says obey Allah. Or they might, when they talk about Usul al-Thalatha and then they go into the chapter of Wala al-Bara, they start to expose their chameleon ways and they start to expose. So the point is, my advice would be, as long as you know these chapters, you know what Thabit, you know what the scholar said, you know what the hadith are, then alhamdulillah you're okay you can differentiate. So when they do get to the Bab, you say, okay, cool. Most of the time, the ulama, they refer to these type of people as sururiya. They're most of them, sururiya, from an individual who's named that, but they dress like you, they apparently hold the sunnah much, because their predecessors, the original Ikhwanis, they used to, suit and tie and, their lihya shave, and you can see apparent. I'm not saying judge people either, because it was very important what Ustad said. Don't judge people based on apparent. Perhaps maybe they're going through a particular phase in their life, but they're not really deviated aqidah-wise. So That's don't link to that aqidah automatically, always.
Yeah, that's an important point, which is it's not the case that his aqidah is sound, means he's upon the sunnah completely, always. That's important. This is what I mean. So, for example, the common ones is to do with politics. It's always politics. So these brothers, for example, they'll start speaking about the scholars are locked up. Warning sign. Scholars are locked up. Always. That's a warning sign. Another warning sign, they'll start speaking about, for example, like I mentioned to you, the Ottoman Empire and the Khilaafa. They'll use that a lot. They'll speak about the Khilaafa. That's another warning sign. They might be teaching, but they're still going to be going back to these issues. They'll also, another warning sign that you're going to find, is that they're going to be saying stuff like, speaking about wala and bara and speaking about oppression and social injustices all the time. The whole thing is social injustice. The whole thing is social injustice. Meaning that, okay, look, this person is oppressed, that person is oppressed, this is not being established, social injustice. Okay, it's important. No one says it's not important, I agree with you. But again, that becomes the main thing. The main thing is that becomes the main thing. Okay, meaning that it doesn't matter that someone's committing shirk, but there's dhulm that's happening in this. So they focus on social injustices as well. So these things, when you start combining all of them together, for example, and also, for example, they will quote, for example, Sayyid Qutb, Mardud, and these things. When you start combining all of these things, the more you add, the more you're going to see. But ultimately, and this is the principle. There's no principle apart from this. Knowledge clarifies the truth. You know the truth by what? By people or by the knowledge? By the knowledge. So the more knowledge you have, the more you're able to discertain the truth from the falsehood. The less knowledge you have, the less you're able to do that. So which is why the scholars of the past and present, they warn against sitting down with the people of bid'ah. And when we say the people of bid'ah, I want to be clear. We don't mean, for example, a lay person that's got some shubahat. Don't go around labeling lay people as people of bid'ah. That's a mistake. He's got a shubha, he doesn't know. Teach him, educate him. He's in an environment where there's lots of shubahat. Likewise with shahawat as well. As a principle, take it as a principle. Don't see someone that's become a bit weak in their iman and start labeling that person as miskin al-iman, da'if al-iman, and like this. What I mean by that is, give him da'wah, enjoying good, forbid evil, take him by the hand. i.e. ta'awun ala al-birri wa taqwa. But with regards to, when it comes to not sitting with the people of bid'ah, it refers to the people of bid'ah that have shubahat, that they're spreading it. The teachers of bid'ah, basically. And these are the people that it's advisable, unless as a small student, not to sit with them. And even if you're sitting with them, it's to do what? What's the benefit? To give them advice. To give them advice, to correct their ways, that type of thing. But it's not to sit with them to take knowledge from them and this like that, because it's generally speaking not permissible as a principle. No.
What advice would you give to a person that I personally know who takes knowledge from? I know a person who's over the Ikhwani Manhaj, and he told him to study politics in university, and it's good for Muslims to study.
Bankrupt. Yeah. Waste of time. Politics where? In the UK. What's he going to study? What's he going to become? Next Prime Minister? Ask him, next Muslim Prime Minister. Study politics for what?
Yeah, that's what he said. He said
it reminds me of the example of the guy that I was at uni with. Yeah. They're exactly on the same manhaj. Yeah. How can that person be a student of knowledge? He's just exposed himself.
Yeah. But he's like this person I'm speaking about. He's the chef that he takes from. He's very he's blinded by love for him. He's obsessed with him.
Yeah.
So anything you say to him is like. So he said, the chef told me to study politics, and he's like 24/7. He's studying for university.
Yeah. Okay. Tell him. When you finish your degree, and you go to get a job. 2 years after your degree is finished, let's have a conversation and see where you are and see if your sheikh gave you the right advice. And if it turns out that I was wrong, I'll follow you. If it turns out that you was wrong, then drop him and refute him and warn against him. Because I'm telling you for a fact, there's no way you're going to spend 3 years studying politics and get a job in politics and find yourself not having wasted 5 years of your life. It's not possible.
No, he's 17, man.
Leave him. What can you do? Just say to him, try to give him an alternative. Why do you want to study politics? That's the question. Ask him why. Why do you want to study politics? What do you aim to do? What's your career path? Like, get someone that's older, that's gone through university, finished university, done 2 years, is working in a career path, and to sit down with him from the aspect of dunya and job. Not deen. He's not studying politics for deen. It's not possible. He's studying what politics? Siyasa kufriya or siyasa shar'iyya. What's he studying? Isn't it? So you can do that angle. You can come with an angle which is kind of like not refuting his teacher. Leave his teacher aside. Don't refute his teacher. But okay, why do you want to study politics? Do you want to become an MP? What party are you going to run for? Labour, Conservative, Liberal Democrats? Which one is going to be, according to the Sharia that your teacher is talking about? So try to come from that angle. No, career path. What job are you going to get? And then if he says, for example, okay, I think I can be like then try to give him you can do that if you do this degree, history degree, for example. Or you can do it with another degree, which is not politics, not going to be as much of a waste of time. That's one angle. The other angle you can come from with regards to somebody like that is, subhanAllah, subhanAllah, I forgot. But point I'm getting at, when you're going to advise him, try to make it be not from the angle of attacking him or attacking his sheikh who he loves and he listens to all the time, basically. Find out why he wants to do it and then give him an alternative. That's the best thing you can do. Give him an alternative. No. Or the other angle you can do, if you really want to go down an argument of, like the Prophet said, an argument of knowledge, ilm, you say to him, Akhi, what are you talking about? That's kufr. You're going to make takfir of yourself by studying like jadalan, not by tadbiq of the hukum on him. Do you get what I mean? You can kind of wind him up a little bit. And sometimes it needs that. Sometimes a person needs to be mocked for him to see the reality of the nonsense that he's involved in. Okay, you're saying, for example, you're on this manhaj of siyasa, of politics and Islamic politics and stuff like that. You're going to go study what politics? Western politics. Isn't that kufr in and of itself? What are you going to study it to do? To implement it. Do you know what I mean? So you can come from that angle if you want to, but that wouldn't be advisable unless you just want to have a laugh with him. No.
Do you know what's funny as well? Most of these people, their main aim is to revive, as Ustad mentioned as well, and is known on their da'wah, the Khilaafa, which they say would then eventually revive the deen in the hearts of the people. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us the opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, and the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the opposite. And that tawheed and the sunnah has to be revived, and as the da'wah, as mentioned by Sheikh Al-Albani, at-tasfiyah wa tarbiyah. So cleansing or purification, wa tarbiyah, and cultivation. That's what the people need. Tasfiyah wa tarbiyah. Cleanliness or purification, meaning away from shirk, kufr, grave worship, hubb al-dunya, and al-wahan, as the Prophet ﷺ said, and cultivation upon the sunnah, tarbiyah, upon the deen, tarbiyatul awlad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned as well, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُمْ. Allah has given a promise. Allah has given a promise to you and those who believe with you. لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّكُمْ, Khalifa, that's what they want. لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. I'm sure Ustad mentioned this ayah, but حتى the word is في دلالة الآية, is in دلالة اللفظ, is in the ayah. The word itself is in the ayah. If you was to look for a particular thing, you go on Google, you type the word, and then whatever comes off of that. If you want to go look for Khalifa, type and look at the Quran, the actual word is within the ayah where Allah said He promised that He will give you and those who believe, He will give you Khalifa in the earth. And at the end Allah says, يَعْبُدُونَنِي لَا يُشْرِكُونَ بِي شَيْئًا. All of it for Tawheed. So, عجب الأمر والله. But anyway, you want to take one more question?
Oh no, since he's here I don't want to keep him waiting.
Last question.
Okay.
Last.
Okay.
I was going to ask, is this why there's so many problems prevalent in Muslim countries of today, like Sudan, Yemen, Algeria, Desire?
What, the fact that they are?
The fact that they rebelled against the ruler.
No, I think, yeah.
They disagreed with things and started to protest, and there's been bloodshed.
No, the bloodshed that happened, then without a doubt that was as a result of khuruj or fitan at the least. Either khuruj or fitan, depends obviously on the place and the situation. But the methodology wasn't a legislated methodology, that's without a doubt, with regards to the bloodshed that's happened, and the result is, it says it all. Which is why the means don't justify there, or the point is everything has to be according to Sharia. Can't take a bit of it saying, well, I'm trying to get the Khilaafa, so I'm going to take a wrong means to establish it. No, everything has to be correct for there to be barakah in it, basically. Other than that, then it's going to be devoid of tawfiq, because you're going against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. I've got a request, inshallah, before I leave. I've got flyers. You mentioned it earlier.
I was going to mention that.
Okay. If it's possible, in East London, I want to have an impact in East London with Medina College. You've got a big impact anyway, alhamdulillah. You've got your asatidha, and inshallah, they're our asatidha. We share. We're giving down in East and the South, inshallah. So I want you to, if whoever's got some free time at a masjid where you are, to either drop the leaflets or hand them out if you can. Other than that, I've got books, inshallah. I don't have enough for all the students, but I'm going to distribute them between the two students based upon 2 questions I'm going to ask. Yeah. Question number one. I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, close your books.
Don't let the sisters beat you.
No, it's going to be evidence, which is what you base the principle of the issue of understanding the Khilaafa and the hukum of the Khilaafa and who's responsible for the Khilaafa. Give me the evidences that I mentioned. Who can give me the evidences? All of them, yeah. 1, 2. And sisters, can you give?
Are they raising their hands?
I don't know. Yeah, raise your hands.
Raise your hands, inshallah.
If you can give me the evidences. We start. Wait. Just write it down on a piece of paper before you say it out. Write it down on a piece of paper if you know them. If you don't know all of them, then I want at least 1 ayah and 1 hadith. You can choose them. It's fine. Based on who can answer, who can give all the answers, who's got the most complete answer.
So then you have to take from everyone then. Do you want to?
Let them raise their hand. And you pick. You have to. The most important thing is you have to have the istidlal has to be there. So if you mention the ayah, what's the istidlal of the ayah? Without the istidlal, then everyone mentions ayah. So pay attention. The people of deviation, innovation, they don't come and say, these are my desires, follow me. They say, this is Quran, this is Sunnah. And they come with as if they got dalil, but their istidlal is wrong. Or their manhaj is wrong. Or their methodology is wrong. They don't come and say, I'm following my desires, follow me. That would be obvious. So you have to know istidlal. What's the point in the ayah? What does it show? What does it prove? The hadith, for example, what does it prove? An ayah and a hadith.
So just to select, the only thing we can do is select by raising the hand. The brothers say, the brothers raise their hand first. But if that brother gets it wrong, you guys are eliminated for one. So automatically I won't go to the next problem or the next person. Go to the brother. You guys get it. So anyway, just raise your hands, brothers and sisters.
The problem with this question is, if he gets it right, then what will the sisters answer?
You said you had 2 questions.
Okay. Alright, let's go. Yeah, I've got 2 questions.
Okay.
I've got more. Yeah, good idea. Yalla.
So whoever raises their hand from the brothers and sisters, if you get it wrong, you go to the next.
Yeah, go on.
The first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. The istidlal here is وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ here. Those who are in authority of you.
Okay.
That's the first one. Where is it? Surah Nisa, verse
Okay.
50.
That's fine, you did well. You got the surah, alhamdulillah.
The second one.
Yeah,
I don't
no.
know the exact wording of the ayah, but Allah, the translation or the rendering says Allah has promised those who have believed وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُم, who establish them and give them khilaf on the earth, يَعْبُدُونَنِي وَلَا يُشْرِكُوا بِي شَيْئًا. They worship me and they don't associate partners with me. So the istidlal here is that two things. The khilaf is connected to their ibadah and they don't associate partners with him. So it's as a result of it. Not the goal. The goal is worship.
Okay.
The hadith is that let there not be three of you on a journey, except that you appoint an amir. And min bab al-awla, he said min bab al-awla, that if only three people on a journey and there has to be amir for them, then obviously for greater reason that a greater community.
MashaAllah. Good. Is that it?
That's all.
Okay, I've got one criticism of what he said. Was a mistake in what he said? Does any of you on the sisters, can you highlight something that he said wrong? I asked for evidence for what? The obligation of having a khilaf. What's one of the things that he said which isn't related to that? The istidlal is not for that. I'm not asking you. Which one was not in the right place? He mentioned 3 evidences. One of them was not in the right place, the istidlal for the question I asked. Which one was it? Nope. Somebody else? Okay, what was it? And what's an ayat to replace that one that I mentioned? So 2 questions. Our second one, you got that right. What's the ayat that would be in that place instead of that I mentioned at the beginning? Does anyone know? Jazakallah, that's the one he said? That's the one he said. There's another one. Shall you pass it back to the brothers or not? Who does anyone over here know? Huh? No, the mistake, we know what it is now. The dalil, another dalil from the Quran. For the obligation of there being a khalifa and the istidlal for it as well. This ayah is important. It's the ayah that you need to know. No, but that's important as well. That's a dalil. MashaAllah, that is a dalil for the point of there being an obligation of khalifa. 100%, Jazakallah khair. That's for that sister, and the brother gets it now because he did well. And the brother next to him gets one as well because he came with a dalil. Unless he's already got it. If you've already got it, then gift it to one of your students.
First question.
That was the first question finished. The main ayat, one of the main ayats is the one where إِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوْ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ وَلَا رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. That ayat is important for this mas'ala. Okay, next question is the meaning of... Huh? Where's the ayat? The ayat is where? It's Ali Imran, ayat number 80 something. As a principle, Jazakallah khair, the Ustadi gave you a point. With regards to when you want to find something on Google, what do? Word search, isn't it? You type the word. Likewise, when you're doing research on a mas'ala yourself, which you all should be doing, there's no point coming to lessons if you're not going to go home and do research. That's an advice to myself and to yourself. Go to the Quran app, type the word that you're looking for. Khalifa, Khilaafa, Wali, Al-Imam. Look at the ayats that come up. You'll find it. That's Okay. Second question. Meaning of Khilaafa.
Hands up.
Hands up. You can't answer again.
Adam Sheikh.
Okay.
It comes from the word Khilaafa, which means to succeed.
Yep.
And Khilaafa is like succession.
Half an answer.
Is it like
Goes to the sister. You started saying, once you got to the bit, and it's like, we knew that you were stuck.
The sister there is...
the one who succeeds, the one who came before.
That's the same answer he gave. Wait.
Goes back to
No, you can't take it back to them yet. Go on. Say again. 50. Wait. No, wait. Don't speak. Hold it in. Leave it on the sisters until they finish, they exhaust their opportunity to answer. Yeah. Anybody else on the sister?
Any other sisters want to try?
No, it's half an answer.
Just تثبت السؤال.
Okay, you do. Listen.
No, we say this.
Okay, the question again. The meaning of Khilaafa, linguistically and Islamically, what is it? What is it? I mentioned the definition. I mentioned Ibn Khaldun. I mentioned other Al-Jawayni and all the other ones that wrote in this topic. What they said.
The one who succeeds the one who came before, and the one who deals with the worldly affairs of the community.
And preserving the deen. Okay, good. It goes on that side, and you get for half an answer. You're going to get the book anyway. Islamically centers on two things: preservation of the religion and governance of the dunya affairs of the ummah. Those two things is happy preservation. Inshallah, last question. The difference between uniting the ummah and uniting the ummah under a leader and being united as a community. What's the difference? What's the difference between? I mentioned you make a distinction between them. What is the distinction?
Is uniting the ummah under the Fardul Kifaya.
Jazakallah khair. Well done. Uniting the ummah is Fardul Kifaya, means an obligation upon specific individuals. It's not the obligation of every da'i Muslim to say, I mean to establish Khilaafa. But it's an individual obligation on every single one of us to be as a community, helping each other, supporting each other, and uniting each other.
Just quickly, did anyone go to the kitchen? No?
The last three are for whoever's going to help me volunteer by handing out leaflets. Okay. It doesn't have to be in East London, it can be wherever your local place is. Inshallah. Is there any?
The brother asked first.
Huh? No, that's fine, inshallah. How many? 1, 2, 3.
I don't know.
Whoever wants to do it. I've got more copies, there's not an issue, inshallah. You'll come into the car and I'll give them to the brother. I've got a few more copies in the car. Sisters are too busy to volunteer, or have they got time to help out?
Sisters, if you want to volunteer, help out, inshallah.
It can be any time, whenever you are available during the week on a Friday. The main thing is that it's a place where it's busy and you're able to reach sisters and just give it to them. Or outside the university, for example, if you attend.
These off the brothers.
No, they're just all mixed up, yeah. If you're unable to, no stress, inshallah.
In order.
No, they just give them out. Just give them a partner, just give out what they can give out from them.
Any? So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. I think they're mixed. So there's open day.
So I'll put it there.
Yeah, put it there. Jazakallah khair.
Take part.
Did I give away my copy of the book?
I don't know, you probably did.
Okay.
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 You probably did.